Well, that's an interesting question because my mother hated aging. So she would lie about my age so she could lie about her age. And so she never wanted to celebrate her big milestone birthdays because she didn't want people to know. And I remember distinctively when I was really young, she'd be like, "Don't call me mom because I look too young to be your mom." So I had to call her by her first name. I went the opposite way completely because I was like, I want to embrace my age. And she scolds me for telling people how old I am. She's like, why do you need to tell everybody your age? And I was like, well, I'm proud to be this age. And, like I work out, I take care of myself, and, I look very young for my age. So I'm just like, I kind of like to brag. So why would I hide it? I think people need to see that aging is a privilege. We lose people at such young ages sometimes, in their 20s, children, and being able to live long and experience life and grow. And actually, I see some people, I feel I always say they have aged it, but they haven't matured. And so when you get to have wisdom as you grow and you can impart that wisdom to the younger generation, I think it's a privilege to be able to still be alive and celebrate life and everything that we see around us. Yeah, I think it should be seen as, an honor and a privilege to be able to live many years and still be part of this world. Cosmetics, anti-aging is weird because anti-aging means really that we're not supposed to grow old, and it's kind of like the antithesis of what life is about. We're supposed to age, and aging is where everybody goes. That's the trajectory. So anti-aging, I think people want to be stuck at a certain place in our lives where that doesn't exist, and we need to embrace that. We're all go there's an arc, and it's part of the beauty of life. It's a beautiful thing, and the arc is going to go towards aging and death, and you can't anti-age really at the end of it. I would say like yesterday. Sometimes I say we grow and we don't realize, like, oh my god, I'm an adult now. When we go to friend's house and we're sitting around and the kids are playing, and I was like, oh, we're the responsible adults in the house if something happens. It's very weird to have that realization. But I would say the biggest moment is dealing with perimenopause. It was like flagrant to see how much society, especially for us Gen X, how much society wasn't prepared for the impacts of aging and what it does to our body. And so that was like a big slap in the face because it was like a wake up call, how the body changes and there's certain things that you just can't stop. So that's why, anti-aging is kind of a farce because you can't stop it and it's just happening. And so realizing that there are changing that happens physically and then also emotionally, and I realized, like, oh, I'm an adult now, and it has to be like almost a conscious decision to say that I'm in charge and I don't rely on my parents anymore because that's what comes with age. So perimenopause is twofold. It's about aging and it's about women, right? And I could talk about this all day. And so I'm super comfortable talking about it because when I realized what was happening to me, I started to ask all the women in my surroundings, and they didn't realize that it was happening to them because we're all around the same age. And so I started to dig deep into the information. So our bodies are changing, and the studies out there don't support, there's no research to support us. And so what happened is there's a lot of women that were gynecologists and OBGYNs that realized that they were going through it and nobody was there to help them. And so the women the doctors, they didn't learn it in school. They had to get extra certification to learn about it. And once they started to learn about it, it just exploded. And so I had issues, and hot flashes is the least of the issues. I had issues with brain fog, anxiety and depression, and my body was changing, and food insensitivities, because every cell in our bodies have estrogen receptors, right? And so anything can be affected through perimenopause. And so it goes so much along the topic of not wanting to talk about aging and not wanting to talk about what's happening to women. And so I am so proud of the generation that decided to debunk this. And my cousin's mother-in-law said, "Why do you talk about these things?" She's like, "Because your generation didn't." And I started to wonder, I'm like, what did my mother do? What did my grandmother do? What did my aunts do? Right? And so not wanting to face that we're aging, not wanting to address women's issues is what has gotten us in this particular place. I was suffering for 7 years, not knowing. I went to see a fertility doctor and I was already in perimenopause, right? And they never mentioned that. They just call it geriatric pregnancy. And just that is like a really awful term. And so for me, I think that talking about it is really how I get to empower other women. And so last week I had a friend, I spoke with her for an hour and a half about where to go, what to do, what kind of medication she can have, what kind of doctor, where to find a doctor. The week before, another friend of mine, because at dinner I talk about it, and then I said, look, you're in your 40s, you're in your 50s, you're in perimenopause. You just don't know what symptoms are part of perimenopause. There's no shame. It's part of aging, and we need to talk about it so I can empower other women. First of all, it's again the women's issues. They don't want to talk about that. The whole menstrual cycle and talking about periods is just taboo. So that's that part. And then the stigma around talking about aging. They don't want to talk about death. They don't want to make plans for the future because they think it's calling it in. And so if we can suffer in silence, then, we have honor in that. And I don't get that. Our generation, we're like, if we can get MHT and we can have the necessary medication to keep us thriving longer, then that's great. It's not anti-aging, but it's about being able to have a better quality of life. I think what brings me happiness, or it's the simple moments, my husband and I, we have a really good relationship, and we have these really in-depth conversations where we talk about all sorts of things, and to see how we're aligned in our view of life, that makes me happy, because he really shows me what it feels like to be loved the way I wish my parents would have loved me, for instance. So I think that makes me my happiest. And to be able to enjoy the simple moments, me and him, when we talk, we're like, we have a good life. And it's really in perspective to, what everybody thinks a good life is supposed to be. We have a place to live, we have food, and we can travel, and we have, more than the basic necessities. So we're happy. I think the tolerance for other people that are not, doing the work. In the sense that I'm a person, I'm really introspective, and I do a lot of, I guess, emotional work. Trying to heal past traumas, and very spiritual in terms of meditation and working on being a better person. And I think people who don't do the work just irk me. Yeah, I think that's hard, because I see them getting older and I'm like, I can't believe they still think this way. Like, when is it gonna click for them, And it probably never will. And so that sometimes I find that very difficult, because I feel I leave some people behind, because I'm growing in a way that they're not growing, and they're still in a different place. And particularly people in the family where they saw me as a specific person and with a specific personality, and then they realize that I'm growing and we're growing in different direction. I think that can be hard. I think in our 20s, we think that it's our prime age and this is it. Like everything is so important. And we think that our society makes it seem like you need to be a millionaire by 30, like 30 is under 30. And so when we're in our 20s, if we don't reach these certain milestones, when we get to 50, we have this feeling, this is it, and this is how I'll be the best that I can be. And I think what I would say to my 20-year-old self is that the best years are yet to come. There's so much more that we can accomplish. I would never want to go back to my 20s. The only way I would go back is if I could go back with the knowledge that I have now. I think these years, with the confidence that I have, the inner confidence that I have now, are the better years. So I would tell my 20-year-old self that, this too shall pass, and you can look forward to your 50s. Well, ultimately, everybody is responsible for their own life experience. And so advice is always good. But when young people think that this is all there is, I think having the perspective that, you can reinvent yourself at 50 and at 65, at 70. Yesterday, I played pickleball for the first time, and one of my friend's daughter, she was coaching me, and she's like 17. And she was like an amazing coach. And she was saying the best pickleball player in their club is 82, right? And so that's amazing. How can we not want to learn from someone who has all that life experience and that's still in great shape and can whip everybody's butts at pickleball? Well, I used to say that I could die tomorrow and I'd be okay, but I know I want to do more. And that as we're having the conversation, I'm just like, yeah, I want to live until I'm 96 like my grandma and get to see this world, even though sometimes it feels a little bit dire, but to be able to contribute and to give back and to share my life experience. Honestly, I share even if people don't want to know. But so I think being here and having that opportunity and staying as long as I can, yeah, I appreciate that.